A warm welcome to everyone to the session on cultural intelligence and cultural bias in the age of social media and AI, organized by Waha Women. Friends, as you know that in this age where social media and AI shape how we see the world, conversations like these are no longer optional, but they are essential. It is essential to understand diversity, but for navigating it with sensitivity and fairness also. So, we are very delighted to have three distinguished speakers with us or panelists with us today. To begin, we have very seasoned, very experienced Nandita Khere, a branding and marketing strategist, speaker, author, and mentor, also director at UGA Global Advisory and co-chair of Women Entrepreneurship Committee at MCCIA Pune. Our second guest, very esteemed Gunhild Hernig, co-president of CETAR Switzerland and an executive consultant specializing in cultural intelligence and cross-cultural integration. And last but not the least, very accomplished, Dr. Aurora Martin, a passionate advocate for gender equality and human rights, vice president of the International Institute of Human Security, and founder Mobile Museum of Modern Day Slavery. I welcome you all and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Rajni.
you, Rajni.
Have a great blend of knowledge, experience, and expertise. And I'm very delighted to open this dialogue with my first question for Nandita. Nandita, given your deep experience in shaping brands and narrative across diverse audience, I'm curious to hear your perspective about your observation of cultural intelligence in today's digitally connected world.
Okay. So let me go back a little bit into, like Gundil said, 70s and 80s, because I'm also from that period. Any communication which happened, or marketing which happened for products and services always had a Western template. And when I mean West, I don't mean Europe as much as the Americans. So whatever came in was very much about doing exactly what the Americans did. So all the advertising language was also about, very westernized. English was the language to be used. Whereas India, even now, I don't think English is what is called the main, let's say, the language of communication, particularly when we look at the numbers and it's most of the time I find that I'm speaking in Hindi, which is a very good thing. But so what used to happen was this whole westernized template, to the extent that, certain products and services, when they came into India, they came with an entire mindset that we will, what you call, culturally also impose our these things on you people. For example, let me give you a very good example of how Kellogg's came in. So Kellogg's, being this cereal, they decided to come into India, and they set up their entire factory and so on and so forth. And they thought that they would replace the diverse breakfast table and bring the Kellogg's cereal in the center. Whereas within a few months, they found that they were nowhere even in the periphery. So what really happened was that, they believed that, Indians will drink cold milk with the cereal. And even if temperatures in India are 40 degrees in summer, we still drink hot tea, which is something. So we never have cold milk ever for breakfast. We've always been, tea drinking, hot drinking nation. So breakfast was never, and breakfast was always very, very hot. So they had to go back to their entire, what you call, to innovate and make changes. And then what used to happen is that when people poured in hot milk into the cereal, it became one soggy mass and nobody wanted to eat it. It was so tasteless. So there were such things which happened. I mean, I'm giving an example of, let's say, a food item, particularly, to come and take for granted. And I find that that sort of an template used to dominate all our communications, marketing, even, let's say, for example, the way we were influenced with Hollywood. everything of, whether it was, music, whether it was rock and roll. And so it had a great kind of I would say an influence, which fortunately now, simply because of the way the access to information has happened through the digital media, which would otherwise, I think, would have been very warped. That's my uh, this few inputs which I would give regarding the cultural biases, which and even today here in today, when I see that we still try to do things which the Americans do, wear jeans, where we've forgotten how to wear, let's say, salwar kameez, in the so-called ultra urbanized or high net worth individuals. Yes.
But I have always seen you wearing wonderful Indian attires, and I always admired you in that.
Even as a European, just to say it, I used to go to India very often for the last 30 years. So wearing a sari, if once you learned it, it's the
Yes.
most comfortable you can think about. In the beginning, you don't get it done, but after that, you
Yes.
love it.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Wonderful point. And Nandita, you brilliantly touched upon how digital platforms are influencing cultural narratives with some of the amazing examples from marketing point of view also, and from linguistic point of view also. And now I'm building on that, and I would like to bring in Gunthil. So I want to ask from you, Gunthil, in what ways is social media reshaping our understanding of culture and identity?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And yeah, social media is changing culture in several connected ways. So my first thought is always, how does it change our human identity? So are we able to keep a focus on the human when talking about social media? I question this. So first, but it widens the exposure. That would be one answer to this. So people anywhere can broadcast everyday rituals, language, as we also heard from Nandita, styles, and steady exposure reduces the surprise and shifts norms. So that is exactly something what changed as before, looking at print media or something like that, which is just slower. So another point is it hands people agency. So agency is a big word often misused. So identity becomes something we craft publicly. This is something I didn't learn this. To do something publicly was very well thought through. So in my family, and my parents were business people, so there was nothing publicly by trial and error. So stories, aesthetics, and recurring practices are just shown. So, and that accelerates a cultural change because everything is faster. So, and it helps on the other side to create new subcultures, which is, how can I say, I always was missing some subcultures I had in my in my youth, but of course, new subcultures spread quickly. And I have to be honest, not that I always understand what they are and what they mean. So another point is it amplifies voices and it marginalized communities use platforms to document injustice, for example. This is a huge thing, and I love to hear from Aurora also on this. And you can organize support because we have a wider outreach, and the mainstream is forced to include the conversation on it. And yeah, there's something else, maybe the commercial angle, and Nandita also pointed it out. You can just use things to make it trendy and to generate income, to generate new wealth. But the question is always for whom. So, and on the technical side, I'm not an expert, and I'm happy to spell this word, is algorithms. they shape what we see. So amplifying some voices and muting others. So if I'm part of the ones who are kind of exposed, I might like it. If I'm part of that who are kind of turned down, who am I to go against what an algorithm can create? So practically like social media speeds up cultural mixing. But we don't discuss what culture means. I think we all know that this is really a wide field. But on the other hand, it enables identity experimentation. But I have a question in view to authenticity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more about the point that social media is shaping what we see and believe. And on the other hand, I mean, we have yet to start conversation on AI, but AI is shaping how the content is filtered and delivered. So I'm continuing on the same line of thought, and I'm turning to Dr. Arora to understand how she thinks AI is, if she thinks AI is amplifying or reducing cultural bias, or if she feels both.
Actually, I shall continue the ideas of Ms. Gunhild. Actually, both and in the same time, moreover in the same time, because we can't say about AI that is a neutral actor. AI is a mirror, sometimes a magnifier, is a mirror of the societies that produce it. When AI is trained on historical data shaped by inequality, for example, by discrimination or by limited representation, inevitably will amplify existing cultural bias. We see, for example, in gender language models, in recruitment algorithms, in content moderation systems, that many disproportionately silence minority voices. Coming from Europe, from the European perspective, where values such as equality, human dignity, inclusion are formally embedded in policy frameworks, there is a growing awareness of the risks. The European Union, for instance, is attempting to regulate AI not only as a technological tool, but as a social actor with ethical consequences. This is very important. On the other side, in regions like Armenia, where I come from, where I am now, or we can extend also to the post-Soviet and transitional societies. The challenge is different. Here, AI enters ecosystems where cultural narratives, historical memory, historical identity are still being actively negotiated. This means that AI can either reinforce inherited stereotypes, including gender or ethnic hierarchies, or if used critically, it can become tool for cultural rebalancing and visibility. From my gender studies work, from human trafficking perspective, I see a particularly urgent dimension. AI can both expose and obscure vulnerabilities, can help detect trafficking patterns, can help support victims, can amplify marginalized voices, but can also reproduce harmful stereotypes. Stereotypes about women, about victims. It can normalize exploitation, or even more, can facilitate new forms of digital coercion. So the key question is not whether AI amplifies or reduces bias, but who designed it, who regulated it, and who has a cultural intelligence to question it.
You have brought in very interesting points through this conversation. You included not only gender studies, but also human trafficking. And you also talked about some of the policies by European Union. And I would love to hear more about it if time allows it. But that really sets context for my next question that I have for Nandita. And Nandita, I really want to understand the subtle form of cultural bias that we see on social media platforms today.
Let's first and foremost, I would say that all these tech companies, social media companies, they all originated, or rather, they were started in the US. So the US is like that control, and so is with the algorithms and so on and so forth, and the biases. And we know that they definitely will, what you call, beat. Now, there have been, certain instances even recently now with the flare up in the Middle East. If you see that, if you put in certain these things, whether it's on YouTube or you ask certain questions and so on and so forth, in many ways, you either get what you call banned or whatever it is. So there are these things which, so you know that there's somebody who's controlling the narrative. Now, my one way of looking at it is also, let's say country wise, let's say, for example, India develops its own entire AI learning models like, we did with Sarvam. See, now that will have it'll have data which is all very, very much with Indian, plus it will be the latest. So I find that a lot of the information so-called with AI, which is peddled on the digital platform, which is free, which is quite a little outdated and also out of context. So if I had to ask something which is a very Indian related, they will always be, oh, but this, oh, but that, oh, is that so?
Yeah.
So, but, let me say another, let me put it also, there's a very interesting outcome of all this. After the Indian Railways, you will be surprised to know that YouTube is the largest supporter of what you call income for in India. Are you aware of that in terms of employment?
No, really?
Yes, yeah. So that is, so what happens is that YouTube, you have a lot of these guys who have their channels, whether it is, let's say you take a state like Bihar, and there are guys who are doing local channels there, and they have and they become influencers and they monetize their channel. So after the railways, it is the YouTube in India which has become, the most what you call
Wow.
yes, generative income. So or to look at the other way around also, and of course, that YouTube and all of them, the moment they have data, AI comes into the picture and we're peddling the narrative which is most suitable. And so I would say that there are pros and there are cons. And but one thing, yes, suddenly people have become in India. We used to. I'm sure all of you also. How did information or communication come to us? Gundil or Aurora, let's say in the 70s, I had to go and buy an encyclopedia,
Yeah.
I had to buy information, but now I don't need to. I don't need to, go and buy an Encyclopedia Britannica or that, so on and so forth. Today, I can just, go on and seek the answers that I want. And of course, then it's the question of whether that has validity or whether. Now, you see Wikipedia. There's a lot of bias as far as, and if I have to come to a certain kind of, what they call the left and the right. So you always had the leftists and the rightists, and the left narrative and coming out more through Wikipedia and so on and so forth. And of course, and in a country like ours, where you suddenly have this. This where there's a so-called left and communists dominating the socialists dominating the what you call narrative, and so that's what Wikipedia used to also have that sort of a thing. Now I think they're easing out slowly, considering that he came and visited during the AI symposium, global AI, this thing that we had. So let's see. Yes.
Absolutely. And I mean, I have a lot of respect for such platforms like Wikipedia, which became first-hand source of information. But most of the times we can rely on that information. Of course, at times I have cross-checked, but I will not say that 100% that information is reliable.
True.
Okay, so very well said, Nandita. And your point makes me think about the long-term impact of social media and cultural biases, especially when these influences are so pervasive in nature. On that note, I want to turn to Gunthil to understand, do you think global connectivity is diluting cultural identities or strengthening them? What would be your take on it?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I want to link it to what Nandita said, because you know, I come also from a generation where I asked my parents or my family, and I was so proud that we had these thick, large books at home, at least 3 or 5 of them, not 25. But so what I want to say is, no matter whom I asked, my parents or somebody else, my identity was kind of clear. So I knew who I was talking to, and people knew who I was. So it was in a smaller circle. Even if I reached out then when I was older to a professor, they knew who I am. I didn't have a fake identity. I mean, we know that kind of those things happened over all centuries, but in general. So, and while I'm asking a question, I could rephrase, because my question would not, you know, be answered one-on-one. It's more a dialogue about it. So, but to answer your question, so global connectivity does both. You know, which means depends on power and agency, as always. So on the strengthening side, people blend influences, fashion, food, music, language, we heard it already, expertise, and many other aspects. And they mix life and work. There is no separation, you know, and it's all kind of fun-based. So they build identities to draw strengths from this multiplicity. The diversity is actually used. So, and this connectivity that can help diasporas, for example, to maintain traditions. So that is on the positive side. So across distances, and allow communities to revive or to adapt practices for new generations. But on the diluting side, what do we see, and what with whom are communicating, and who communicating with? So where is the sender, and who is the sender? Who is the one who is receiving? So what's behind everything? So is there any proof? Is there any proof of a trend, like stripping nuances and meaning, and make things just short kind of statements or something like that? So when representation is controlled by outsiders, so when everything can be changed, cultures risk being staged for consumption, and rather than lived authentically. That is also time-based. So how long does it take for me to get into everything? So the key factor is the agency, how people can act, and also what the access is. So, and the empowerment. I mean, empowerment always we think of top down, but there is an empowerment. I first have to learn. I need access to certain channels, yeah, and I need to learn how to use it. So, and the connectivity empowers also communities to tell their own stories, to control how cultural elements are shared, etc. At a certain stage before they get maybe diluted. So I don't want to sound so negative, but also the community norms determine which outcomes is more likely if things going in the one or the other directions. And there is the power of those communities we belong to, because very often we are not the only one. I'm not a single person. I'm the influencer. Yes, we have all these individuals, but in general, there is something behind. So that's for the moment on this.
Right. Very balanced perspective, I must say that. Very interesting as well. So Gunthil, you said that according to you, global connectivity does both. And I want to understand from Dr. Arora now about her perspective. about algorithm, how she feels that algorithm play a role in reinforcing cultural stereotypes.
Mhm. First of all, I would like to continue the idea of Ganfeld. Um, we can talk about connectivity and disconnection because we have in terms of identity, because indeed we have this chance, huge chance to know to meet the world on the horizontal level, vertical on horizontal level. We have everybody here in a click distance, but which is the risk is to lose the connection with your real identity, because uh, taking a look to the young generation, they are disconnected of their relatives, of their grandparents, of their real identity. They don't have time. They are eager to use the computer, but they don't. They are not able to have a dialogue with their grandparents. So this is something very precious that they are losing. Alike, they can affect their reactions, but the integration, the awareness of integration of their own family identity is not so much taking in consideration by the new generation. So here I see the risk before talking about algorithms. When we speak about algorithms, these reinforce cultural stereotypes in the very subtle but very powerful way. When I speak about stereotypes, we have selection, repetition, and normalization. This is the process. Through selections, algorithms decide what we see based on past behavior. If a user had interacted with certain types of content, whether gender, cultural, or political, the system feeds more of the same. What begins as preference becomes predictive confinement. Second, through repetition, social media and AI systems privilege engagement. Content that triggers emotion travel faster. Over time, repeated exposure transforms stereotypes into what feels like common sense. Third, normalization. When certain narratives dominate our feeds, alternative perspectives disappear. This is how echo chambers are created, not by isolation, but by curated abundance. From my work in gender studies and human trafficking, I see how dangerous this can be. Algorithms may reinforce stereotypes about victims, who is credible, who is deserving, and in doing so, they shape institutional responses and public empathy. So algorithms do not just reflect culture, they edit it, they amplify it, and sometimes they distort it. And once again, the antidote is not purely technical. It is cultural intelligence, the ability to question what we see, to recognize patterns, to consciously seek differences in a system designed to minimize it.
Absolutely. And you really raised very genuine and valid concern that people are new age kids especially are less connected with their grandparents, with their
Yes, and
surroundings.
in Europe, for example, this fuels polarization. And Armenia, they create sensitive identity narratives or inherited cultural tensions. So it has personal, community, regional reverberations.
Right, absolutely. And Gunhild, Aurora, Gunhild, and Nandita, I want to share a tangential example with you, which I have recently come across. I saw some reels posted by some solo female travelers on social media. And what surprised me most, that they discuss about some safety security concern while traveling in some countries. So when I paid close attention to their content and tried to understand where it actually came from, I understood it was more based on their own assumptions about the cultural norms of those countries. But the problem is now the content which you have put it on social media, it is creating so much of cultural stereotype all over the world. It is giving message to every solo female traveler that that country is not safe, this country is not safe. But my question now is based on about leaders' role in this society. So I want to understand, Nandita, how can leaders and organizations embed cultural intelligence into their digital strategies?
So when you say leaders, do you mean who are the leaders come from all, whether it is a community leader or whether it's the village elder or whether it is a political leader and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think obviously a leader is meant to be there to set certain let's say a stereotype or and everybody follows. I mean, and that's been historical, right? You need a leader and then you have the others. You cannot have two leaders. There'll be chaos. So in many ways, yes, I would feel that it would be important. And see, even on a digital platform, one would say that influencers play a lot of part, particularly in shaping thought process uh, with a lot of the Gen Z, one would say. And so whether it is fashion, whether it is culture, whether it is music, there's that and the other, whoever I think play a definitely important role. I wouldn't like to, let's say that, uh, uh, it's a bad thing. No, leaders definitely will, but one has to interpret or rather understand what kind of a leader we are looking at. I have many leaders. I have a leader who dictates, let's say, the country taking the country forward. I have a leader, let's say, in my domain of advertising and marketing and so on and so forth. So I would think that yes, we all look up to leaders as or I would say people of domain of authority who would shape narrative, shape conversations, and it's very important for them to communicate. And digitally, I think that's the most important platform. Like it's a very simple, Rajani, that I now listen to a lot of people on YouTube where I'm not interested in TV and so on and so forth. I listen to what they have to say on YouTube channels. And suddenly there's been opening up, basically it is this whole, what you call complete, I would say, democratization of information, which has happened, and access to it, to me, which is very, very important, particularly in a country where newspaper. I mean, whichever country where we were restricted. I mean, there was no communication was only through newspapers or books and magazines and all. And now you have, and there, let me tell you, also they were controlled in the sense the publisher used to control what, or the editor used to control what the owner of the newspaper said in order to shape XYZ narrative. Yes.
I think there was some ownership. There was
Yeah.
some ownership.
Whether it is an algorithm or whether it is an owner of a newspaper and so on and so forth, control will always be there. I think one has to be sensitivity, have that sensitivity to discern.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm taking that a step further, and I want to ask Gunhild about it. Nandita just discussed about how leadership can influence cultural intelligence. I want to understand, what skills do you think are essential today to build cultural intelligence in a digital first world, I would say?
So unfortunately, it doesn't come automatically, and you cannot create it with AI. So, and yeah, unfortunately. So you cannot just buy it. And that is the first thing to really think about it. So to build cultural intelligence, for me, online, we might first need to look at the human side. So how to make it human, or to keep it human in the time when most of online seems to fade out towards human side, it fades out towards alternatives, fake identities, etc. We are talking more about the dangers now and how it's threatening than the advantage. So so what do we need? Let's see what it takes to develop some kind of layered skills. So active listening, if people know still what that is, and contextual reading. So not to take a post like, yeah, this is it, and just to look for history, comment, context, and original stories. What is it based on? But I think we mentioned it all before. It takes time. I mean, to click and read, especially when you use your phone, you can only read certain amounts, and then you think you are informed. We use the word information. I mean, in times of magazines and papers, that's what was mentioned. It was something different. Of course, information was never unbiased, or it was the truth. But it's different. Now I read something and I have to question it immediately. It's also boring. On the other hand, I want to be able to talk with people. People ask me things I've never heard about. I'm happy nowadays that I understand what my students talk about, what they ask me, and they love to challenge. They say, hey, what is this or that? And meanwhile, like the first semester, I said, guys, don't challenge me on something you don't even know and you just looked it up. So we have a conversation on this. So it's more taking this humor, but there is this digital literacy and skepticism. Yeah, comes from that. So verify sources, understand what Aurora said, the algorithm and how they prioritize content, and avoid relying on things which go viral or the trendiness. And also people have to face that if things go viral or things become a trend, what do I do with it? What if I all of a sudden I'm part of a trend? Can I manage this? It's a bit like I have a startup and then all of a sudden I have 200 people working with me. I need kind of a certain amount of hierarchy, even the word is not really popular. So I need to organize it. So there's also something like this communication and the adaptivity of it. So changing the tone, being able to format based on different cultural backgrounds, etc. What are cultural norms? Can I post the same thing I do in Switzerland, in the US, or in India, in other areas of the world, in America, in Armenia, etc. So there is something we learned from the last, the recent DAI discussion, and I don't want to get into it too much, so that you can just stop certain things. So depending on your country and your culture background, I mean, basically passport and your job, you cannot talk freely anymore about certain aspects of DEI, etc. So, and we know there are other examples. So there is the reflexivity. So how do I reflect on things? Do I have a routine of asking questions? I question things in a positive way. I can positively ask for background, for better understanding. But the younger generation, when I work with younger students, it's kind of not allowed. I should know it all. I click on it and I should know it all. And that's what Aurora said. You are one click away from everything. So, and there is this community aspect I mentioned before, the community engagement. So there is some activities, some action which can be sustained by the community I'm in, or I can even be part of different communities. But I don't have to do things alone. And on the other hand, I need to choose the community I want to be backed up by very wisely. And then the technical skills, etc., I leave that up to Aurora and then Vita. So privacy tools, legal aspects, etc., and it depends on the area of the world. So, but to practice it, depending on if I work across geographical regions. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dr. Arora, I would request you if you could build it on further, what Gunthil just stated from the point of view of navigating misinformation and polarization. You just spoke about that in your previous answer.
I think we are lucky to have cultural intelligence, and if we wisely use cultural intelligence, we can avoid many conflicts, because cultural intelligence helps us to navigate misinformation, helping us to not react immediately. Today, of course, it is essential, cultural intelligence, because misinformation is no longer anymore about false facts only. It is about distorted meanings shaped by cultural context. It goes even deeper. To navigate polarized online, cultural intelligence operates at 3 levels. First is a level of awareness, understanding that every message we encounter is embedded in a cultural framework, values, fears, historical memories. What appears as truth in one context may be perceived as false very differently in another context. Second, we have the level of interpretative flexibility. Culturally intelligent individuals do not react immediately. They question sources. They recognize emotional triggers. This is crucial because misinformation thrives not on ignorance, but on emotional acceleration. And the third level is a deeper one, the empathetic engagement. Here, cultural intelligence allows us to engage with difference without immediately rejecting it. In polarized environments, the ability to listening across perspectives becomes a form of resistance against fragmentation. So in the European space, where democratic systems are increasingly challenged by disinformation, cultural intelligence trains this critical citizenship. In post-Soviet context, where identity, history, and geopolitical narratives are deeply intertwined, it becomes a tool for navigating complexity without collapsing in division. So on the other side, from my work in gender studies and human trafficking, I have seen how misinformation can silence victims, can distort realities, can perpetuate harmful myths. Cultural intelligence so helps to identify these distortions and restores nuances where simplification is very dangerous. Ultimately, cultural intelligence does not eliminate misinformation, but it equips individuals with the capacity to slow down, to question, to reconnect meaningfully with others in a fragmented digital world. So in a polarized world, this is not just a skill, it is a form of digital responsibility.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arora. I would like to add one more point to it, which I find very interesting, especially for this generation, which feel that AI is the ultimate truth. Whatever there is on AI is the ultimate truth. No one can challenge it. So I really want everybody to understand that the responses that we are getting on any AI platform is actually the reflection of the quality of the prompt that we are giving on AI. Because most of the times, the prompt that we are giving subconsciously, uh, they are leaning towards one side. They are not neutral. So, from this aspect of cultural intelligence, I'm moving slightly on a different tangent that is about ethics and responsibility, which is very important. And I really want to understand from Nandita, how does she think global and act local in digital spaces?
Well, as far as I think ethics are concerned, one definitely has to let's say now it's a sort of a self-conditioning. Each one becomes down to whether it is moral, whether it's a result of values, or whether it is a result of upbringing, and so on and so forth. And one really questions, okay, what exactly would be ethics? So let's say, for example, um, defamation, or let's say putting out untruths or fake news, or fake identities, so on and so forth. Definitely, but I think whether it, regardless of whether it is whichever platform, have always had ethical issues. I remember when it was, let's say, controlled. Perhaps in the earlier days when radio was controlled, no, it was not the case, government control. But later on, when it opened up, you had ethical issues, whether it was radio, whether it was newspaper, whether it was television. So similarly, it is even to do with, I think, the digital platform as well. Each one would carry a responsibility, and this is where then the leadership comes in here, in terms of local leaders, whether it is your community, whether it is your city which you're staying, or whether it is the state where you're staying, or whoever. So you have the various leaders who are going to be then providing direction, or let's say putting in a certain these things about the ethics and so on and so forth. And when it becomes uncontrollable, then yes, it becomes law. But I think yes, it's ultimately, I think it is very much to do with the let's say the kind of upbringing, or let's say the context in which one has learned, and so on and so forth. Now, another aspect of it is suddenly when you have a new medium altogether, one grappling, what are going to be, what is supposed to be. I think ethics, yes, be good to the others, don't cheat, don't be honest, be this, that, be fair, all that. But suddenly when you have a medium where, you're going footloose and fancy free, then it is, it takes time for, to draw, let's say, lines, or developing the ethics, or I would say the rules or policy or whatever. Yes.
Great points. And Gunhild, very quickly, how do you think we can balance this freedom of expression, which I feel is very, very challenging, with cultural sensitivity online? Do you have any tips?
Who am I to answer this? But I try. So balancing freedom and sensitivity requires, again, a layered practice. So, and quite frankly, use your senses and think before you write, record, act, or react online. I mean, you should do it in life as well. But it's easier if I talk one-on-one with you. I can get out of the corner I put myself in. So I can correct it. If it's once it's out, and the net doesn't forget. So, but this is an ongoing negotiation. So it's not a fixed rule. I would say I didn't find one. It requires humility and institutional tools as well. So there needs to be something which is visible, and a culture that values both expression and respect. And I think respect is something I would write it really in big letters. There is this law, rule you find in all religions, in all cultures, is don't do something to somebody else you don't want to be done to you. So act as if you would, act towards yourself. And again, what I said before, there is this contextual literacy, encourage research before mocking cultural forms, etc., not just the copy and paste. The community norms they play a role. So communities can co-create rules for acceptable behavior, how to report it, etc., how to phrase things, and the focus on impact. We have to focus on impact. What I say has an impact. I mean, even if I'm in a classroom at the university, it has an impact of the people who are listening to me. But there's always a chance to talk again, usually. So here, sometimes it's a one-time off. So there are these platform tools we know or we don't know about or we learned about. So there is something, which can be embedded as warnings or kind of filters, things like this, also for users like me who are not coming from the technical side. So you can help yourself and your community to not just burst out and put something into the ether. And there's something which is of interest for me, is to protect a critical way of thinking and writing. So this critical speech. So to encourage it. But the downside is the hate speech. We have it all the time, left, right, whatever, religious based, etc. So, but there must be a space for critique in a positive way. And you need also rules for that. I mean, in all workshops, we have these typical 10 things. How do we want to talk to each other? So talk about yourself, don't accuse people, etc. And sometimes I think we forgot about it online. It's just shooting people because based on my faked identity I might have. So who cares? People don't make the effort to look how we act. So there is the educational part, I think, to balance this freedom and of expression and the cultural sensitivity. So also from a CETA perspective, we try to focus on education, training, and research. So, and those things feed each other. So to go to schools, go to higher education organizations, etc., use the platforms for learning. What you said, Nandita, you can go to YouTube and find everything. If you want a recipe for the new cake, or if you want to repair your car, or if I want to learn a new skill. So also use it for, ethically correct comments, etc., and postings, and what you said, Rajni, to serve kind of everybody in a way that you do good. At least that should be your intention.
Absolutely. And since we are talking about ethics and responsibilities, so I want to quickly understand from Dr. Arora too, the ethical framework you think that should guide AI development in cultural diverse societies.
Actually, in culturally diverse societies, AI cannot be guided by a single ethical framework. It requires what I would call layered ethics of responsibility, combining universal principles with a kind of contextual sensitivity. That's why we need foundational values such as human dignity, equity, non-discrimination. In the European context, these are already embedded in emerging AI regulations, which recognize that technology is not neutral, but create consequences at the social level. We also need cultural accountability. AI systems must be aware of the diversity of the societies in which they operate. This means inclusive data sets, interdisciplinary design teams, and continuous evaluation to prevent the reproduction of cultural, ethnic, or gender biases. We have to think also about participatory ethics, because communities affected by AI, especially marginalized ones, must not only be protective, but they have to be actively involved in shaping how these systems are designed and implemented. This is particularly important in context of societies where identity, memory, cultural narratives are deeply rooted and sometimes fragile. A purely imported ethical model without local adaptation risks becoming ineffective or worse, even harmful. That's why I would add a crucial dimension. Ethics must prioritize vulnerability. AI systems should be evaluated not only by efficiency or innovation, but by how they impact those most at risk. Women, children, displaced populations, socially invisible groups. So the ethical question is not simply, can we build this technology, but rather, who does it protect? Who does it exclude? And whose voice was never included in this design? If AI does not protect the most vulnerable, it is not ethical, no matter how advanced it is. So ethical AI is not just about innovation. It is about justice. It is about voice. It is about responsibility. If we lose these values of humanity, the technology is not helping us to remain what the mankind conquered for so long time.
Great. And I really love the point that ethics must prioritize vulnerability and vulnerables also, I would say that. It's such a deep, profound point. And as we come close to this conversation, I would really request you, if you feel that, there is one remark, one sentence, one piece of advice you would like to give.
Okay, so since, began with me and we're going next to Hild and then Aurora. So for me, I think from my perspective, I think, well, whichever generation, whichever new disruptive technology comes in, and we've seen so many of them, my generation has seen right from, let's say, the computers coming in, from non-computers, then the internet coming in, then AI coming in. They all come, but I think harvesting the best of all these for the betterment and the good, as and particularly in a country like India, where it creates what you call employability, creating opportunity, income generation, and all, would always be very welcome. Yes, definitely there are these I would say collateral damages about whether it is biases, or it is one has to go along and be sensitive enough to tackle it. This comes from leadership. So that's my, but I said, yes, one always welcomes something which is new and disruptive, because it really, has its benefits as well.
Sure, definitely. Yes, yes, please.
Practice guided diversification. So again, make it human. So beside virtual engagement, so meet physically on site at your university, in your club, in your organization, family, friends, you name it, and talk about culture. What does culture mean to you and the others? What does it include? What does impact mean? So what does it mean if sometimes the people have weird ideas about what they can do to create a trend or whatever. They want to be famous and popular, but even getting there, they don't know what to do with it. So, and if we are clearer on offline, we become clearer online. So it will impact our online presence and how our cultural intelligence is built up in ourselves, in our community, and others. So we train to change perspectives often, offline, online. So, and there are working with different communities. So, and online we have to create intentionally, you know, choose a small kind of group of people to work together, you know, kind of, and then learn from other cultures. Culture is not only country or passport, but it's something we have here. We are kind of in a group. We are a reference group. We are interested in a specific subject, but there are other reference groups, and I can learn so much. So I participate in this panel because I want to learn. Yes, I prepared myself and share learning because I'm not just sitting here to listen, but that is co-creating what I call always wisdom. It's a big word, but we need to co-create. And build online routine. So schedule these short sessions that you really check on things, how you act, reflect on yourself, and make cultural learning online a habit. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dr. Arora.
As we conclude, I believe one idea stands above. Technology is evolving faster than our capacity to understand its cultural impact. AI and social media are not just tools. They are shaping how we see each other, how we define the truth, how we build or how we break connections around cultures. That's why I think we have to think deep and to think that cultural intelligence is not longer optional. It's not a soft skill. It is a civic, it is a ethical, it is a global responsibility. From global policy to individual experience, the challenge remains the same: to ensure that innovation does not come at the cost of diversity, of the dignity and human connection. Because at the end, the future of AI will not be defined only by algorithms, but by the values, by awareness, and by the responsibility we bring into them. And perhaps the most important question we should carry forward is not what AI will become, but what kind of humanity we choose to embed it within it.
Very true, very true. And on that note, my sincere thanks to all of you for such a wonderful, enriching discussion, you know, bringing so much depth, wisdom, different, diverse perspective to this discussion. Thank you so much once again for being with us.
Thank you, Rajni, for this wonderful platform of bringing
Thank you.